Right up and down there.
Roger, keep them coming.
The Wikipedia article, The Battle of Hamburger Hill, begins its analysis of the battle as follows. The Battle of Hamburger Hill was a battle of the Vietnam War that was fought by the United States and South Vietnam against North Vietnamese forces from May 10th to 20th, 1969. It was part of Operation Apache Snow. Although the heavily fortified Hill 937 was of little strategic value, US Command ordered its capture by a frontal assault, only to abandon it soon thereafter. The action caused a controversy both in the American military and public. The phrase here of little strategic value is itself very interesting, as is the slanting within this account. A Shau, a young journalist working for Associated Press, who covered the assault, later characterised it in the following terms. In an article entitled, US Assault on Mountain Continues Despite Heavy Toll. This appeared in syndication across the United States at the time. The beginning of the article reads as follows. The paratroopers came down from the mountain, their green shirts darkened with sweat, their weapons gone, their bandages stained brown and red with mud and blood. Many cursed Lieutenant-Colonel Honeycutt, who sent 3 companies Sunday to take this 3,000-foot mountain just a mile east of Laos and overlooking the shell-pocked A Shau Valley. They failed and they suffered. That damn blackjack won't stop until he kills every one of us, said one of the 40 to 50 101st Airborne troopers who were wounded. On May 24, the anti-war Senator Edward Kennedy further fueled the controversy in a speech before the New Democratic Coalition in Washington, in which he characterised the war in Vietnam as unjustified and immoral, and the battle itself in terms as nothing but cruelty and savagery. Moreover, he inappropriately described the assault as simply an up-the-guts frontal assault devoid of any sophisticated strategy. Indeed, the battle was a complex encounter battle in which a range of strategies were employed and in which serious attempts were undertaken to minimise casualties. None of this was to be found in Senator Kennedy's discourse. In coming years, the Kennedy characterisation of the battle would enter popular culture as an icon of military futility in what many mistakenly believed to be an unjust war of aggression on the part of the United States. In the light of such assertions, we need to ask 3 questions. Were such characterisations honest and fair-minded? Secondly, did such characterisations reflect the reality on the ground? And thirdly, what really did happen on Hamburger Hill? To answer these questions, we need to first think about where the A Shau Valley is and why the 101st Airborne was interested in it. The A Shau Valley. The A Shau Valley is a long, narrow valley that runs for about 45 kilometres parallel to the coast and about 20 or so kilometres inland and to the west of the ancient city of Hue. Following the battle for the Special Forces base at A Shau in early 1966, the valley developed into a major stores and staging area for the North Vietnamese army. To the northwest of the valley was another important stores area, Base Area 611. It was from the A Shau that the 6th NVA Regiment, along with other units, launched its assault on Hue during the Tet Offensive of 1968. And this is an important piece of background information if we're going to consider what actually happened on Hamburger Hill. Operation Apache Snow and other operations of the 101st and other units in 1969 were designed with a number of key aims in mind. The first of these was as a spoiling attack to stop the 29th NVA Regiment and other NVA forces from launching a mini-Tet against Hue and the surrounding highly settled coastal areas around the city. The second was to destroy accumulated food, munitions and equipment stores. And thirdly, to bring NVA forces to battle so as to seriously blunt their fighting potential. All three aims of the 101st Airborne were achieved in Operation Apache Snow. Indeed, captured documents evince the fact that the 29th NVA Regiment was missioned first to bring US forces to battle in an attempt to inflict heavy casualties in order to affect US public opinion. Following this, they were then to move into the area around Hue and continue the war there. The elite 29th NVA Regiment that defended Hamburger Hill was severely mauled as a fighting force, with its 7th and 8th Battalions all but wiped out. In and around the mountain there was a body count of 613. However, long-range reconnaissance observed at least 1,100 wounded and bodies that were moved over the border into Laos. This is compared to the 70 dead and 372 wounded suffered by the 101st and other units. However, there needs to be a note here. Many have argued that body counts in the Vietnam War were often exaggerated to make officers look good. While this is true in some cases, a close reading of actual combat records suggests that the opposite was often also true. In and around fire support bases, for example Fire Support Base Ripcord, artillery and air support was applied to enemy concentrations in which no estimate was possible, but often would have resulted in significant casualties. I remember talking to a veteran of the 1966 Battle of Long Tan who said that they stopped counting at dusk, and this later became the official figure for the action. Since unobserved air and artillery power was a major feature of combat in Vietnam, it is a most important point when considering the success or failure of battles such as Hamburger Hill. Moreover, the NVA followed strong battle discipline and tried to remove as many bodies and weapons from a firefight area as possible. It is interesting that post-war claims regarding their own casualties, calculated by the victorious North Vietnamese themselves, tended to be slightly higher than US estimates at the time. This should put to bed once and for all the myth of inflated body counts. If anything, NVA casualty figures for the Battle of Hamburger Hill need to be increased. Critics of Hamburger Hill are wrong when they see the assault as futile because the hill was later abandoned. In fact, the assault did achieve its three aims. Firstly, a spoiling attack to stop the 29th NVA Regiment and other NVA forces from launching a mini-Tet against Hue and the surrounding highly settled coastal areas surrounding the city. Secondly, a move to destroy accumulated food, munitions and equipment stores. And thirdly, a move to bring NVA forces to battle so as to seriously blunt their fighting potential. Nor was J. Sharbat's characterisation of the men who fought for Hamburger Hill in keeping with the reality. It stands at odds with much of the testimony of veterans themselves who took part. It was not true to say they failed and they suffered. Rather, they suffered courageously and they prevailed. Nor was there general disgruntledness against Blackjack, that is Lieutenant-Colonel Honeycutt. As Samuel Zafiri points out in his book, this is the way soldiers talk and let off steam. It was certainly not the majority view of officers and men in Honeycutt's battalion that Honeycutt was a butcher, nor necessarily that of the soldier quoted out of context by J. Shau. Indeed, it is noteworthy that J. Shau only cites 1 out of 40 to 50 wounded as making any comment. That damn blackjack won't stop until he kills every one of us. This is the nature of advocacy journalism and the sensational news story, and needs to be treated as such. It has often been argued that Hamburger Hill, that is Dong Ap Bia, could have been bombed by B-52s and the loss of US lives avoided. This point was addressed at the time by senior officers, including Lieutenant-Colonel Honeycutt. Firstly, such bombing is not nearly as effective as many believe. Secondly, the NVA and COSVEN in the South were monitoring United States signals intelligence and knew when and where B-52 strikes were coming, at least in general terms. All they had to do was move forces across the border temporarily and send them back later. Remember also that this was a well-dug-in enemy. Even the huge amount of TAC air employed and directed by FOCs, although it killed many NVA, left many to face the attacking US forces as they moved in on their positions. What stands out in the whole Dong Ap Bia fight is the high degree of professionalism exhibited by US forces, their dedication to duty and courage under fire in general. In 1987, a highly fictionalised movie account of Hamburger Hill met the theatres, written by James Karabatos and directed by John Irvin. It is billed by IMBD as a very realistic interpretation of one of the bloodiest battles of the Vietnam War. Fortunately, an Australian reporter was on Dong Ap Bia at the time of the assault, and we have his film report, including an interview with Lieutenant-Colonel Honeycutt and other members of the 101st involved. The contrasts are rather striking.
You ready? Okay, this is an interview with Lieutenant-Colonel W.F. Honeycutt. He's the battalion commander of the 3rd Battalion of the 187th Infantry Airborne. No, it doesn't matter, I'll fix it up on the tape.
187. Yeah.
Keep it going. Okay, stop it. Get that thing there. Get on asking you questions. You right? Rolling? Rolling? Colonel, can you tell me why you think that the NVA were protecting that hill?
Well, we don't know. I suspect it's the 29th NVA Regimental Headquarters. It's a big enough complex. Certainly was enough well-equipped troops and everything up there. And it's an ideal place. It controls the A Shau Valley, and you couldn't have an airstrip or anything in this valley as long as they held that hill, right?
Do you think the NVA withdrew, or you actually drove them out?
No question about it. They didn't withdraw. We drove them out, and we're now in pursuit of them, and there's a hell of a lot of them dead up there.
You've achieved your objective now. What do you get from here?
Oh, we'll consolidate on the hill. We've already got it. There's one other little area which the other unit, the Army unit, we're trying to get them to push into, which they'll accomplish in just a little bit. Then we'll continue to clean the area out and search out the NVA and destroy them and run them out of South Vietnam.
Were you convinced you'd get the hill today?
Well, yeah, we didn't have left here if we wasn't convinced we were going to get it.
Tell me, why did you use a ground assault in preference to clearing the area and using B-52s?
Well, you couldn't put a B-52 on there and be sure of absolutely destroying it. You still have to go in. We bombed it. We put more ordnance and stuff on it than a single B-52 or even multiple B-52 strikes would put. You got to remember that you don't own a thing. You haven't destroyed anything until you go up there with foot soldiers and destroy everything that's up there. Air power is great, and we couldn't have made it without it, but you still have to go up and destroy these complexes and everything that's up there, and his weapons and his equipment, and run his soldiers out of South Vietnam.
You said shortly when you came in, you're observing the assault from the air, that you saw NVA heading back towards the border on foot. Right.
Saw a lot of NVA headed toward the border. We shot them up.
What that there is a stop my voice out, put a cover. This is an interview with Major John Collier of Charlestown, Massachusetts. He's the operations officer of the 3rd Battalion, 187th Airborne. 187th? Right. Major, can you tell me what your men are engaged in doing at the moment, or what they have done with the hill?
Well, our men right now are up on the top of the hill. The first two companies to reach up there were companies of the 3-187th Infantry. And right now they have the enemy trapped in a bowl to the west of the major portion of the hill, Hill 937. And it appears that the enemy is fleeing to the west, and Battalion Commander Colonel Honeycutt is trying to bring all forces to bear on a squeezing movement to trap them in the bowl, leads to the west toward the border.
Major, how long has the operation been going now? How long has it taken?
Well, we combat assaulted in here on the 10th of May, and about 2 kilometers to the west, slight northwest of Dong Ap Bia, and fought for this hill that we're on now, which is about 1 kilometer west of Dong Ap Bia, and got that the very first day. And then it was Colonel Honeycutt's plan to rift for the high ground, so we sent companies out in several directions to rift the major terrain in the different directions. And the company that was sent to the east of Dong Ap Bia met stiff resistance. So we held what we had and planned for another couple of attempts, but envisioning that the casualties might be greater than we'd accept, and also based on intelligence of the area, we determined that there was a sizable force that we should go after with more than our own unit. And that culminated in today's operation.
At the moment, Major, you have the entire top of the hill secured, right?
That's correct. We have the entire top of the hill.
Yesterday, we understand that you suffered very heavy casualties going up the front of the hill here, as you see in the background. Can you mention what sort of casualties there were?
Well, that was a couple of days ago. We made a couple of attempts for the hill. The casualty figures are a little bit misleading. The number of men actually killed, and the number of men who evacuated and are actually seriously hit is just a proportion of the total casualties. Any man who's scratched or nicked, for example, we had RPG come in on the headquarters here a while back, and we had a dozen men hit, but mostly light scratches. We've got to record the casualties. The back system is excellent. We come out with a load, and immediately 15-20 minutes we have a medevac right to proper hospital facilities. So the actual serious casualties aren't as heavy as they might appear. Total number.
You still have the enemy on the run. I assume that you're pushing them towards the border, right?
That's correct. The machine gun you hear in the back is far to the south of our position on a visual sighting of enemy moving west.
Make certain that we don't fire up our own troops. How about checking it out? Lieutenant Perry? This is Charlie 2-3. Now, Roger, how many units have you got shooting us out? Yeah, we traced it down. The WP belongs to the mortars. No problem. Just tell them to make sure that we've got elements that are closing up on that location at this time. I want to be certain that when we do fire, that all rounds do land proximity of the top. Drake, Charlie 18, Charlie 23, are you aware of the target?
Alert your people. They're using gas on them. Make sure they're near their mouth. Then tell them to come up on Blackjack's foot. Niner. All right.